So, I always start with that. Don't ever forget that. I always start with that word. So, um, I wanted to show you this guitar, and it's real special to me because, first of all, it's pretty old. It's not quite as old as I am, but it's pretty old. This is a 1970 ES335 TD, and I've had it for a long time. I don't know how long I've had it exactly. I think I bought this back in probably the late 80s. But I love the guitar, and I have a couple old ES. I have a 60s ES335 and a couple older ones. But anyway, this is probably my favorite, even though it's not as old as the other two. It's got great tone, which I love. But the most special thing about this guitar is I had this guitar with me in 1990, early um, January 19th of 1990. I got to meet my biggest hero as far as blues players, Mr. B.B. King. And I was in Orlando at a show, and I'd been putting together a band. I was working with a guy from Scottsdale, Arizona, Jerry Nelson. He was a big real estate developer and had lots of money, and great guy though. So we were putting a band together for a huge club he was putting together in Cocoa Beach, and he put me in charge of getting all the musicians. And so he asked me who my favorite blues player was, and I said, "Hey, B.B. King's, you know, that's the guy. Thrill's Gone, and How Blue Can You Get, Sweet Little 16, um, all that stuff." So I didn't expect this, but he calls me up one day. He says, "Hey, BB King's in Orlando. We're going to see him." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "Bring your wife. I got tickets." So I said, "Sure, I'm there." So we went to the show, and I can't remember what theater. He was at a theater, and we had seats right near front of the stage. He didn't buy cheap seats. We had good seats. So we're sitting there, and I'd brought my guitar, just in case. I brought this guitar. And so we're sitting there, and he says, "You want to meet B.B. King after the show?" And I said, "Are you kidding me?" He says, I said, "Yeah, of course I do. Who doesn't want to meet, one of their heroes?" And so he says, "Well," he hands me $100 bill. True story. Hands me $100 bill, and he says, "Go over to that guy there at the door and hand it to him. Say, hey, you want to meet BB King after the show?" I thought, okay. So I took the $100 bill, walked over to the guy, and he was a usher. And I said, "Hey, man." I showed him the $100 bill. I felt like a gangster, man. I showed him the $100 bill, and I said, "I want to meet BB King after the show." He goes, "Oh, sure, no problem at all." He says, "So when BB's in his last song, you know, you just come up here, and I'll get you back there." So he's playing his last song. Me and my wife. Jerry didn't want to go. He just said, "Nah, you go. I'm gonna go back out to the car and wait for you." And so me and my wife, the usher, BB ends the show. The usher takes us back to BB King's dressing room, and BB hasn't even gotten his dressing room yet. So we're sitting there in his dressing room, and I don't have my guitar at this point, and but I'm sitting there in a chair, and my wife's sitting there, and again, he's not even back in his dressing room yet. So a few minutes go by, and he comes walking in, and he's like real jovial, and he goes, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" I said, "Well, we come, the guy put us back here, wanted to meet you." And he goes, "Oh, cool. That's so cool." He said, "What's your name?" And I said, hey, Skip, and I told him my name, and he asked, asked my wife's name. And he says, so you're a guitar player? And I said, oh, yeah. And I said, so I started telling him how much I loved his playing and how much of a inspiration he was to me, and and everything. And I said, I brought a guitar, and would you be into signing it for me? He says, oh, yeah. He says, go get your guitar. And so my wife says, don't, no, you just stay here and I'll go get it. So my lovely wife, Nancy, goes back out, and you got to understand, this is January 19th, and I know it's not like being up in New York or north, but it was a little cold that night. My lovely wife went back out the car where Jerry was, got this guitar and brought it back in. And so we're sitting there, and you got to understand, we're sitting in his dressing room, and nobody's come back to the dressing room, and it's just me, my wife, and B.B. King. And so she brings the guitar back. I pull it out, and he says, hey, let me play that thing. He liked this guitar. He says, let me play that. It reminded of one. He says, that reminds me of one I used to play. And I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. So he's sitting there playing my guitar, and I'm just drooling all over myself thinking, wow, B.B. King is playing one of my guitars. I'll never touch it again, So he's playing the thing, and I'm like, just in awe. I said, would you mind showing me something? He goes, well, what do you want me to show you? He says, I want you to show me how you do your vibrato. He goes, oh, okay. So he proceeds to tell me how he does his vibrato. If you have ever seen B.B. King play live, he's got that certain shake that he does, and his thumb is not on the traditional vibrato that I use a lot. Is like, I call it the slow hand vibrato, like Eric Clapton and a lot of other players from the late 60s and 70s did, where your thumbs up here, and you use that as a pivot point to get your vibrato. I shake my wrist to get my vibrato. So B.B. King doesn't do that. He does this vibrato. His thumb again is not on the neck of the guitar, and he does. I can't even do it as he was so good at it. But he showed me how, because I said, how do you control the vibrato? And so he anchored his thumb, the side of his thumb, up against the neck here, and he used that for the anchor point, where he could still do the shake with the wrist. The wrist is still controlling the vibrato, so to say, but he kept this against the neck. And that's how he did his vibrato. So, and I thought it was just cool that he showed it to me. So I learned how to do the B.B. King vibrato from the guy himself, Mr. B.B. King. So he played my guitar for about 10, 15 minutes. Again, we're sitting in his dressing room and nobody's come back there yet. So we had been sitting there probably for 20, 25 minutes, and he's playing my guitar, and I played the guitar some, and he says, oh, you play really good, whatever. I wasn't there to try to audition or anything for a gig. I just wanted to be in his presence because, again, he was my hero. So got around to it, and I said, so you're going to sign my guitar? And he did. So I'm going to show you that. He was so kind and humble, as you can see. Let me hold it. Yeah, get it right. So there's a date. And the other signature on there is another story. Hank Garland is a guitar player that I had the pleasure of meeting in the 90s. He lived in Jacksonville, actually Orange Park. And my wife's sister lives up in Orange Park. But that's not how I met him. I met him through a friend of mine named Ed Day, who knew the Garland family. And Ed knew that I played guitar. And he says, hey man, I know this guy up in Orange Park, and he's a guitar player. His name's Hank Garland. And I said, what? I said, you know Hank Garland? He says, yeah. He says, you want to meet him? I said, of course I want to meet him. So that's another story. But yeah, I got to meet Hank, and we became really good friends. I used to drive up to Orange Park and spend a few days and hang out with him and his family. I got to become friends with him and his family. Billy was his brother. And yeah, I could tell you some good stories about Hank. He told me stories about him playing with Patsy Cline and all the country artists that he played with. But Hank was such a fine musician. But anyway, back to the BB King. BB King. So BB King, we sat there, and again, 20, 25 minutes we're sitting there. He's playing my guitar, and he signs it. And all of a sudden, somebody comes back and says, hey, and BB King offered us food. We had a table of food there. He says, you guys hungry? Get something to eat, you know. He was so cordial and so kind, so humble. But finally they come back and they said, hey, BB, you got to go do an interview. They're wanting you to do a TV interview. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll be right out. And so he's sitting there and he goes, hey, guys, they want me to go do a TV interview. Do you guys want to come along and watch? And we did. And he was just that kind of guy, you know. It was like, hey, you want to come along and watch? And we did, of course. And he was so kind and humble, and I'll never forget meeting him. And actually learning how to do that vibrato like him. So, but BB King's been a huge influence on my playing. I can't play like him. I hear guys, you know, again, I think all those guys, you know, like Jeff Beck, BB King, Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, they all had that certain sound, and you could identify who it is. So, are there guys that sound like exactly like BB King? I don't think so. I think BB King had his own DNA and his own fabric, and he just, you could tell who it was, a real BB King when he played. The vibrato and just everything. But so I want to play some BB King licks. Not really, but I'm going to play some guitar in the style of BB King. I can't play exactly like BB, but... And he's that iconic lick of Sweet 16, I think. You know. That lick. That's such an iconic lick. But if you haven't heard of BB King, get some of his live at the Regal, live at Cook County Jail. Just some great guitar playing. Good blues stuff. So I'm just going to jam for a minute or so, and be done with this video. But I hope you appreciate the BB King story and this guitar. It's a 1970, and these pickups, I hardly have any gain up on this amp, but these pickups are just that hot. That's the bridge, that's the neck pickup. This is the bridge. You know, it sings. It's a nice guitar. I don't play it because I'm scared I'm going to wear the autograph off that BB put on there and Hank put on there. So I just kind of treasure it and play it every once in a while. That, and I'm scared someone would steal it. The guitar, I don't know, value-wise, maybe $4,000 or $5,000, 1970. I would say, yeah. But it means more than that to me because of the story behind it. But anyway, I'm gonna play some BB King licks. anyway, see y'all the next time, and keep practicing. You know, the key to playing guitar or anything is repetition, repetition, practice, practice, practice. And when you think you've practiced enough, practice some more. Anyway, have a good